Hello, everybody. Welcome back after a fascinating and exciting and insightful morning of panels and keynotes at RAID Digital. It's been really, really eye-opening, and thanks to all of our speakers and to you all for your attention. Great to have so many people on board as we grow this event, and look forward to RAID Physical in Brussels on the 26th of September. So please do keep that date in your diary there. We're going to be at the Stanhope Hotel. Fantastic hotel. It's going to be great there. So we've got four more panels this afternoon across a whole range of different topics. Speakers from all over the world. We've got speakers from America, from Africa, from Deloitte, from Meta, a whole range of topics: digital currencies, personalization, fairness in the modern data ecosystem, bridging privacy, security, and borders. But first of all, we're going to have a panel now about bridging barriers between competition and innovation, looking at the barriers between competition and innovation and how they can perhaps support each other. What can competition authorities be doing to be fair equally to businesses and consumers? And what are the commonalities and/or differences in approach to antitrust in different jurisdictions? So I'm delighted to welcome an esteemed panel of experts, and to chair this session is Dr. Nicholas Gervasis, who's the Assistant Professor in Law of Technology and Data at the University of Nottingham. So over to you, Nicholas, now to introduce our expert speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben, for the kind invitation, and a very warm welcome to the members of the audience. Today we have indeed an excellent distinguished panel with the broader topic being bridging barriers between competition and innovation. So together we have with us Sophie Ahlswede, who is a policy officer at the DMA Taskforce of the Directorate General for Competition of the European Commission. We have Felicity Algate, the Director of Digital Markets Unit of the Competition and Markets Authority of the UK. We have Pedro, the Head of Information Society Services at the Competition Division of the National Commission of Markets and Competition of Spain. We also have Anaïs Bauduin, who is Assistant Director of the Economic Advisory of the Technology, Media and Telecommunications Group of Deloitte. And finally, we have Dr. Ning Wang, who is Senior Research Fellow in Data Science at the University of Oxford. So the big issue, of course, here is innovation and competition. We have made tremendous let's say advancements in the last 20 years. It's not only technology, it's also the economy, it's also digital markets. And of course, here there are some, let's say, some conflicting approaches to the whole matter. There is one approach, that is that competition incentivizes innovation. And of course, there's the other one that says that, well, actually, larger investment is the one that will promote more innovation. So we have here are a few questions that our panelists are going to address. You can also, the members of the audience can see them on their agenda. Are there barriers between competition and innovation, or can these two support each other? How could competition authorities be equally fair to business and consumers? What could be the commonalities and differences approach to antitrust in different jurisdictions? Can we put global challenges ahead of domestic concerns, paraphrasing kind of thinking globally, acting locally, so to foster digital markets worldwide? And at the end of the day, what role should data considerations play in competition decisions? So we start with actually the very generic starting question, whether there are actually barriers between competition and innovation, or whether they can support each other. Starting with Sophie Ahlswede, so who is going also to explain us the experience from the European Commission. Microphone to you, Sophie.
Hi, everyone. So are there barriers between competition and innovation? I believe there shouldn't be. And in fact, the DMA is one of the instruments that will ensure that there won't be in the future. The DMA was particularly put in place with the objective of ensuring contestability and fairness in digital markets, which digital markets have been known for not being so contestable and fair, and therefore stifling innovation to a certain extent. So this regulation really is pro-competitive and pro-innovation in the sense that it will open up opportunities for smaller businesses and business users of core platform services, and thereby supporting competition in digital markets and ensuring that innovation is possible.
Thank you so much. So now to the next panel with the same question, that is Felicity Algate from the CMA of the UK.
Thank you. So just to add to Sophie's point, actually, at the CMA, the proposed new digital markets regime is all about using competition, because we know that that is the best way to promote innovation. It's very fair to say that the largest technology firms have, deliver huge value to society, both businesses and to people. But actually, because they're so large, that they now constrain the ability of other firms to compete with them. Also, they act as gatekeepers, so actually innovation by smaller firms, they have to go through these largest technology firms. So I agree completely with what Sophie said, is that competition is the best way to promote innovation. And it's not only competition on the sort of products and services that the largest firms provide, but also much more broadly for the economy as a whole.
So competition is a way to promote innovation. What do you think, Pedro Hinojo, from the National Commission of Markets and Competition of Spain?
Thank you, and I totally agree with Sophie and Felicity. From our point of view, from the point of view of the Spanish Competition Authority, when this whole debate started and the initial proposal of the Digital Markets Act in Europe was about to be published, so there were public consultations carried out by the European Commission, and we had the opportunity to contribute to the debate with a position paper, and that's one of the messages we convey, that competition is a way to promote innovation, actually, but the design of regulations should take also that into account in order not to avoid this not to avoid this innovation in digital markets. The regulation should be appropriately designed, and we think that the DMA has found this balance. So we find the DMA appropriate, and I'm not so familiar with other regimes around the globe, but with the case of the DMA, we think that this has been the case, that the design of regulation has balanced the effects on innovation.
The DMA, of course, is going to monopolize large part of this discussion, and we're coming back to it one way or the other. But as said before, actually, there is the approach of startups that actually competition there is one perspective. Then there is a competition of the other perspective of where we have a larger investment. So I'm turning then to Anaïs Bauduin from Deloitte. What is, let's say, the general idea about the same question across business?
Well, I would say it's mainly a big debate and a complex question to answer. I think as regulators say, competition drives innovation, but at the same side, on the other hand, innovation drives competition. And for example, we can see lately in generative AI, how those innovation in generative AI have stimulated the market. So I think it's very a fine balance to be found by regulators to ensure that their decision don't damage the potential for innovation in the wider ecosystem. And those are very complex questions and usually open to quite big debates. But there are debates we need to have, and that's regulators need to have with the wider tech ecosystem and other competition experts to ensure that the balance is fine, the right balance is fine to ensure that regulation don't impact innovation in the longer term.
Thank you so much, Anaïs. And finally, I will turn to Ning Wang, because as far as I know, you have a different kind of experiences, less regulatory, less business, it's more research-based. So you have actually engaged in research within various markets, and then also observing and working on the impact on data flows, and not only personal data, but also market data. So what do you think, from your broader experience, are there barriers between competition and innovation, or can they support each other? Or is competition actually the way forward?
The point with the previous panelist, I think the relationship between the competition and innovation is very complicated. They can certainly support each other, but sometimes in some situations where the competition can also hinder innovation. Competition can drive innovation by motivating the companies to improve their product and service, to invent more innovations, and also encourage the company to invest more in research and development and come up with new ideas to differentiate with themselves with the others. But sometimes, on the other hand, intense competition can sometimes hinder innovation. For example, the competition is focusing on the cutting cost, and companies may reluctant to invest on the R&Ds. So in high competitive markets, companies may worry about their innovations quickly copied and imitated by the competitors and reducing the potential reward of their effort. And this also creates some problem for the companies. So I think it's very complicated problems and questions and depend on different situation and also different company and different industry as well.
Thank you so much, Ning. And that was exactly the detail that follows Anaïs' observation from before. Exactly what are the conflicting interests there. So in view of all this, we also have a developing regulatory, let's call it ecosystem, actually an ecology of laws that, for example, they come from Brussels. And I will turn to Sophie Ahlswede. So reflecting on the same concerns that Ning described in detail, how does the Commission approach the need for dialogue with digital platforms, or under the DMA with gatekeepers, where we have the larger investment?
So the Commission basically has entered into a dialogue with all relevant players in this area, be it potential gatekeepers, but also potential beneficiaries of the obligations in the DMA. So these are third parties that are not gatekeepers. And I think we've opened different lines of dialogues depending on what we discuss. So this is on a bilateral basis with the potential gatekeepers, mainly talking about delineation, designation questions that are immediately in front of us, but then also obviously already thinking about what and how we approach the application of the obligations that are in the DMA once they would be applicable next year. So this is on a bilateral basis. Then we have also organized a number of multilateral workshops that have been broadcasted and streamed online. We have another one coming up this Friday on the 5th of May. So this is on data-related subjects. And we've basically tailored these workshops to different issues that we're looking at. This will probably be the last workshop before the summer now. And I think the exact way of engaging in this kind of dialogue has not been defined for the post-designated, let's say. But I'm sure there will be some forum to discuss in a multilateral forum as well. And then we've also encouraged gatekeepers to basically engage bilaterally or in a forum that they see fit with third parties to discuss applicability of obligations and how to test this, how this will be monitored, to engage in more detailed dialogue, basically, with or without our presence.
So it is indeed a developing relationship, and going actually to moving with Felicity Algate, what is actually in this respect the approach taken by the UK? We also have actually some new developments there, and as one commentator pointed out last week, it was the first week that tech law news were dominated by competition law issues, and there is of course the juicy issue that we're going to address later on. But there is also a new Digital Markets Competition and Consumers Bill coming through, as you pointed out before. So how these new approaches, how this new regime will support innovation and the dialogue with digital platforms?
Thank you very much. So I'll briefly run through the new regime in the UK as it's currently proposed. But before getting on to that, I suppose I just wanted to make the broader point that large digital firms clearly provide very valuable products and services, which improve all of our lives. We wouldn't be able to do this conference quite so easily without digital services, and also help businesses more broadly, so both the tech firms themselves, but also kind of everyday bricks and mortar businesses. But in digital markets, there are some aspects which are different from offline markets, as you might call them. And we know from lots of research, talking to lots of stakeholders, that regulation is needed. In some cases, there are firms, including UK startups, who could bring new innovations to consumers, and they can't at the moment because of the market power of digital giants. I've already mentioned how these large firms can act as gatekeepers, so controlling smaller firms' access to their own customers. So if you want to advertise, you have to advertise online, and you have limited options as to where you can choose to do that advertising. So that's sort of setting out the case for regulation, but there is obviously a balance. And in the UK, the proposed new regime is that it will sort of try and get this balance right, has already been discussed. So we don't want to unduly increase the regulatory burden on those firms who will be subject to the regime. And to mitigate any risks of intervention cooling markets, we'll work in collaboration with the firms to create bespoke remedies that are targeted on specific designated activities. So I'll just explain a little bit more what I mean by that. So in the UK, the new regime will apply only to those firms with substantial and entrenched market power. And that means that they have a strategic position in at least one digital activity in the UK. So a firm will be designated after an assessment as having strategic market status in a particular digital activity. And firms who meet that threshold will be designated as SMS firms, so there's strategic market status. And there is also a threshold in turnover. So they will have to have a global turnover of 25 billion or a UK turnover of 1 billion. So this is only going to apply to the largest firms. The designations will be for a maximum of 5 years. So we will review them at least every 5 years. Before that period, the designations can be narrowed or removed. So if something changes substantially in the market, then the firm can give us evidence to show that it no longer has SMS. And the regime broadly will have 3 pillars. So there's each firm that's designated will have conduct requirements. So that sets out clearly how firms with SMS status are expected to behave in relation to their relevant activity. Then we may introduce what are going to be called pro-competitive interventions. So these are addressing the factors which are the source of the firm's market power. And this might cover things such as data mobility, interoperability, data access, all those sorts of things. So this is designed to try and sort of, slowly chip away at the firm's market power. And then finally, there are new merger reporting requirements, so that SMS firms will have to report mergers with a value of at least 25 million and a UK connection to the CMA. So that's slightly different from the kind of current regime. And I suppose just to sort of finish off in terms of how this supports innovation. So I've already said that effective competition matters to people. And people need to be protected from harms and be able to select the products and services best suited to their needs. So how does this relate to innovation? Well, because actually, in terms of the products and services that are available to me as a consumer, actually innovation can help develop new things that I may want to choose. It can help improve lower prices, as has already been discussed. But also competition can help businesses, so fair access to digital markets as both customers themselves, so the businesses buying services, maybe advertising, all that sort of stuff, but also competition. And overall, this adds up because dynamic competition in digital markets creates an attractive ecosystem for investment, innovation, and growth. In the UK, we've heard from small startups and a variety of so-called unicorns. So these are, potentially very large firms who've told us that they're holding back on making further investments because the large online platforms are blocking them from bringing their competing products and services to market. So we've heard evidence about how this is happening already. And in terms of how we will work with, firms, interested parties for the new regime, similar to what's already been discussed in relation to the DMA, we will be talking very frequently and carefully to a whole range of organisations representing both, the biggest firms who might be regulated, also what you might call mid-size or challenger firms, and then also other stakeholders. So consumer bodies, business representative organisations, and that's in order to, all of our regime will be evidence-based. So this is the beauty of the UK regime, is that it is bespoke. Each of the conduct requirements and the pro-competitive interventions will be tailored to the firm and the digital activity to which they apply.
Thank you so much, Felicity. Now I'm going to turn to Pedro to actually reflect on the Spanish national experience again. So there is, on the one hand, the interplay between the regional digital regulation, that's the DMA, and of course the competition policy of the domestic one of Spain. So do you think that under such a larger scheme, actually national regulators are empowered to act on DMA non-compliance, precisely because we're reflecting on broader international digital markets?
Yes, I mean, we think that this interplay between competition policy and regulation, in this case, as you have said, an EU regulation of the digital market is of utmost importance, because we agree, as you said, that the challenges of that some digital platform posts have a supranational perspective or dimension. So we think that the DMA we think that it's a valid approach to tackle some of these challenges. But at the same time, we see that competition policy has a role to play in the post DMA environment, as I said, manufacturing, for instance, to promote innovation as well. Competition policy can be a valid tool, and we see that the competition policy has a role to play also in digital markets. So it's not only the DMA, which is the only tool to address some of the challenges posed by digital market. It's also competition policy that is going to address some of these challenges. And competition policy in the European Union is applied both by the European Commission and by national competition authorities. And their national competition authorities, such as the Spanish CNMC, will have a role to play. There is also one tool which can be very useful to ensure a coordination between the DMA, the digital regulation, and competition policy, which is the possible empowerment of national competition authorities to investigate non-compliance of the DMA within the territory, even if the European Commission is going to be the sole enforcer of the DMA. The national competition authorities can be empowered to investigate non-compliance within their national territory. We have not been empowered yet. We hope that the national parliament empowers us to do so, but we have not been empowered yet. But we consider that to be very useful to address some of the challenges you were mentioning.
Thank you so much, Pedro. So turning again to Anaïs, precisely because at Deloitte, I assume you have the experience on the one hand of the national UK context, and then on the other hand of the EU context, and of course a broader perspective. So anything that you would like to add on this relation between competition policies and innovation, about the encouragement and incentivizing of innovation?
Yes, of course. Well, first, both Sophie and Felicity talk about the engagement, and it comes back to my initial point on needing those open dialogue between regulators and the ecosystem. So really welcome this, and I'm sure tech firms will really take the opportunity to engage with regulator. And I think for me that this open dialogue and having these constructive dialogue is for three main reasons. One is to really ensure that competition regime objectives, but on the other side, innovation process can be understood on both sides, so both by the regulator and the tech ecosystem. And
like for regulator to be able to take into account the impact of innovation and the dynamic effect of competition in the assessment framework and tools that they use to make a decision. So again, like going back to initial points, like those that balance between innovation, competition, and regulation is really a complex and fine balance to find. So on a lot of like it's a case by case decision, and there's a lot of debate and different views, and it's really important to integrate like tools to better understand innovation and in digital markets, which is a really fast evolving and with like specific feature around like a data, but also a network effect and so on. And to come back more closely to DMA and DMCC, I think like some part of the dialogue will need to be more like on the, so Felicity mentioned like the interoperability measure or data portability measure. And what has not been really defined yet is how those measure and what type of innovation those measure will promote. And I think we as a society, but also as a practitioner, want to really come to that question on what are the types of innovation these measures will tend to promote. So are we talking more like innovation at the edge or like a more systemic innovation? And I think like, again, like the work is starting now on those regulation and surely on a case by case basis to make sure we come to some type of insight and answer on the type of innovation we want through those new competition regime.
So from this perspective, the work is starting now, but I'll go back to Ning and let's go and reflect upon what you said before about the promotion of research and development in data-related research, because you also raised some concerns. And now we have all this new developing competition legislation across the national in the past few years, and I'm going again to refer perhaps we have a proposal in the EU about a new data act. So all these concerns together, the stuff you actually talked about, to make sure that we promote research, data research, while ensuring that businesses comply with not only competition laws, but data protection and the requirements of other data laws like copyright again and data in general and so on.
Yeah. Thanks, Nicholas, for the questions. I'm happy to be part of this interesting panel discussions. First, just very brief about myself. I'm a deputy director for Oxford Oct Lab in Digital Economics. So we are a research lab in Oxford focused on the intersection of mathematics, economics, and digital technology. Our team of experts develop an innovative approach to understand the dynamic of digital economics, include AIs, blockchains, and big data. And the previous panelists talked about the competitions between different companies. And actually, we are looking at the competition at the national level. We just published a paper and started the data set in 33 countries across Asia, Europe, and North America. We examined how the AI innovations affect the economic growth. And the findings, there's a positive relationship between the innovations and economic growth, especially in China and the US. But in Europe and most nations show some negative correlationship, and only 4 countries and demonstrate the positive relationship. And these studies uncover the reality that the technology and the innovations varies significantly depend on different areas and different countries and different regions. And the growth of innovations and technology also is unbalanced. And with the new technologies such as artificial intelligence, AIGCs, and large language models, ChatGPTs could potentially accelerate the inequalities globally. And we also find that 1 unit increase in AI innovations also increase the group GDP economic growth for 0.2%. And we also looking at the competitions at national levels, for example, China and the US. And China US is competing intensively in the field of artificial intelligence, and this has a very significant implication for the global technology landscape. And China, for example, both countries, they are invest quite heavily in AI research and development, fund the project in academic, and also for the private companies. But US has historically been a leader in AI research, and China made rapid progress in recent years. And China and US are both competing to attract, develop, retain top AI talents. US has traditionally been a magnet for the global AI talent due to its very strong educational institution. China is enhancing its domestic AI talent pool, attracting lots of overseas talents. And both countries are focused on develop AI applications across different areas, for example, healthcare, finance, transportations. US has an edge in advanced research. China made significant progress in areas like face recognitions, natural language processing, and also AI-driven civilian systems. China has massive populations and extensive data collection practice and provide a vast amount of data to train their AI models. And this has wanted for China to develop AI applications, for example, for the consumer product. However, there's also concerns about the data privacy, security, data securities. Both countries also invest significantly for AI startup. And US has a very famous venture capital systems and a long history for technology innovations. And China is very quickly catching up. And with a growth number of AI companies and a very strong focus on AI commercializations. So this is examples about different countries and different approach for different innovations. And China is kind of a Chinese government take a more top-down levels and a centralized approach. And the US and the West, for example, Europe, the approach is more decentralized and with the focus on public-private partnership and collaborations between academic, industrial, and the government. So this is kind of example. I just show you how the competition between different countries, regions, and internationally.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ning. Now, just to pause for a second, because we're already halfway into this panel, and I think this is the right time, the right opportunity to actually ask our audience kindly if they have any questions for our panelists. Please do not hesitate, and you can type down your questions in the Q&A section on the platform that you're using at the moment. So going back, precisely because the US was mentioned, and of course the large investment and large stakeholders come from that area, and actually skip a bit the queue that I had in mind in the first place, and I will turn back to Felicity again because I mentioned before, I hinted it. So the CMA recently announced that it's blocking the merger between Microsoft and Activision. It's an ongoing issue, of course, with Microsoft and EA. So Microsoft said that this deal means that it is difficult to invest in the UK and that the UK is closed for business. And there were other things, of course, mentioned. So what is eventually the insight of the CMA in response? Are you stopping investment in the UK?
Thank you for the question. I mean, I suppose just some sort of broad points. So for anybody who is interested in reading more about the reasoning behind the decision, I would urge you to go and read the documents that have been published, which explain in detail why the decision was made. I mean, I suppose so. It's worth saying the deal involves two huge US companies. So Activision alone had over £700 million of revenue in the UK in 2021. I know there have been some questions about why the CMA was looking at it, given that it is these two big US companies. But the reason the CMA had jurisdiction is because there's a statutory test related to turnover, and because of Activision's level of UK turnover, the question for the CMA was whether the merger may be expected to result in a substantial lessening of competition in any market in the UK. And I'm not going to go into detail in all the sort of reasoning. As I said, if you are interested, please do go and read the decision. But I suppose some broader points on merger control is that effective merger control is pro-business and pro-growth. And because it is assessing potential mergers before they happen, it can actually help maintain competition and prevent a market evolving in a way which means maybe it becomes dominated by one large firm. And what innovative growing businesses want to know is that if they develop good products, that they will be able to sell them in a fair, competitive market. What they don't want is to face obstacles by strong incumbents who've locked up the market by buying up sort of important inputs. A couple of figures, I don't want to sort of blind you all with numbers, but just as a sort of few points. So estimates show that in the past 3 years, the CMA merger regime has saved consumers more than £2 billion. And it's also enabled UK businesses to enter new markets and grow. And it's also worth pointing out that thousands of mergers take place each year. The CMA typically considers around 750 deals, and only between sort of 12 to 14 go to an in-depth investigation. So in the UK, there's a two-stage process where you do an initial assessment, and then depending on how that goes, they may then look at it in more detail. So of those 12 to 14 that are then looked at in depth, many are cleared or resolved through remedies, so firms can offer particular things, and only a few are prohibited. I suppose I'd also, just to finish on this point, make the point that the CMA is not the only authority with concerns around this merger. So in the US, the FTC is also trying to block the merger. Their system is slightly different, so then it's not a sort of administrative decision maker. But yes, I think the headline is that no, we're not closed, we're not stopping investment, and that this decision should be looked in the much broader context of the merger regime overall.
Thank you so much, Felicity. So the linking with this question going to Sophie, and it is, of course, there were again similar incidents, let's say similar requests in the past. How would actually the Commission decide on such issues of mergers? And that is more like a specific issue, but also generally how would the Commission decide whether to apply the DMA as it is, or let's say traditional competition law in such cases?
So I think the general line we have on this is that we decide on a case-by-case basis. That's obviously the easy answer, but then it's also obvious that the DMA is there to address, ex ante certain conducts in certain services. So obviously, whatever the DMA covers, the DMA will be applied to those services and to those conducts. And I mean, the DMA is limited to certain services, as you're aware, and to certain kinds of conduct. So whatever is not inside the scope will obviously be subject to competition law enforcement as before. There is even case law that says you could, in theory, apply both regulation and competition law. I think this is certainly not the aim, or also from a resource perspective, not the most efficient thing to do. So I doubt that this is something we will do on a regular basis. But as I said, this would be a case-by-case assessment, depending on the circumstances specifically.
Thank you so much. Moving to Pedro with the same question, more or less, and let's say that actually there is a similar scenario, but how would, in general, in which cases would the DMA apply, or whether actually the more traditional domestic competition law would kick in?
So sorry, but I cannot say something very different from what Sophia said. This is going to be case by case. I think that the DMA has very, very interesting recitals around 90, 91, 92, where they say that sometimes a certain conduct can be an infringement of competition policy, of the DMA, or of both. So in this case, I think a good amount of coordination and exchange of information between the European Commission and competition authorities is going to take place, and the DMA considers these mechanisms of enhanced coordination. We of course already coordinate with the European Commission as far as competition policy is concerned. Mechanisms have been upgraded in the DMA to ensure that this is going to take place in a consistent and coherent manner. We cannot be very forthcoming. Many things would happen along the way, and there would be some cases that would be dealt by the DMA. There would be other cases which would be dealt by competition policy. As Sophie said, not all conducts, not all services are covered by the DMA. So even in some cases, the DMA is not going to be part of the solution because some issues would not be an infringement of the DMA. And the final message I wanted to convey is that the implementation, the enactment of the enforcement of competition policy in digital markets is going to be key to ensure that DMA is future-proofing, because we all know what are the relative merits of the DMA vis-a-vis competition policy. As Sophie has said, the DMA is ex ante, so it can be more straightforward. But the DMA competition policy is more flexible. So by being able to tackle some of the issues, we're going to find some issues that we cannot even foresee as of today. If we tackle them with competition policy, perhaps we find new conducts or new services that should be included in the DMA. So we think that the enforcement of competition policy in the markets, of course, is going to be part of the post-DMA environment.
Okay, thank you, Pedro. I mean, yes, indeed. Regarding the case-by-case perspective, of course, yeah, we're talking about digital markets in general, about gatekeepers, but we, as also Ning pointed out before, there are also different kinds of services going through. There are different needs. Some of the mergers actually may have, let's say, a different starting point, different principles underlining the need or the no need of a merger, according, of course, to the company's perspective. So, precisely because I moved to the company's perspective, I turn back to Anaïs Bauduin. So, retrospectively, or at least where we stand right now, because before you say that, well, the work is starting now, but we have also a very good regulatory and practice experience so far. Do you reckon that the solutions like the DMA or the DMCC in the UK, are they actually sufficient to promote innovation within, first of all, within their intended context settings, that is the EU and the UK, and of course then, because we mentioned that before, are they enough to promote innovation at the global level? Because we are talking about the global level, and as highlighted before by Nick.
I think at the end of your question, but I guess I got most of it. So I really think that, like, going back to the objective of the DMA and the DMCC is to promote fair playing level for firm. So, like, going back to this point, like this main objective, my view is that, like, it provides possibly part of the solution to innovate innovation. But going back to my initial question on type of innovation that we want to promote through those competition regime. But as Felicity said earlier, and I'm sure, like, official from the DMA would say, like, the DMA and the DMCC are not competition policy; they are framework, and they're not either like an innovation policy. So there are historical examples where regulation have enabled to offer better consumer outcome and stimulated, like, innovation in certain sectors or markets. But at the same time, it can be quite a risky process. And again, the work is starting now, and there are still a lot of questions to unpick to get to the solution and to mitigate the risk that we end up in a world where potentially preventing some of the major players to innovate doesn't lead to other players to want to innovate, but actually prevent them from investing in R&D as well.
Thank you so much, Anaïs. And let's then now turn to the role of data in this whole scheme of things. So, Ning, what do you think? What technological tools and methodologies are available to enhance regulatory oversight and transparency in the use of data by business, especially in view of the latest insights by other panelists?
Yeah, thanks for the questions, Nicholas. As I said, bad competitions will hinder innovations, and good competitions will drive innovations by motivating the companies to improve their service and product. So sometimes we need collaborations between companies, the partners, and also that will foster innovations. So we need a balance between competitions and collaborations to simulate innovations and to drive the programs. In that sense, we need some technological tools and methodologies, especially for data, and to enhance the transparency in terms of the collaborations. And that's why we are working at our lab to develop some technological tools can help us, the regulators, the partners, to enhance the transparencies in terms of user data for different business. For example, the recent developments in AIs, artificial intelligence and data analytics, and will help us to analyze the large data sets, identify the patterns, and detect the potential violations of data usage. Also, blockchain technologies. Blockchain is decentralized and transparent in nature, and can help us to create some secure record of data transactions, ensure the traceabilities and accountabilities for data usage. And this can help the users and the partners to track their compliance and prevent the manipulation of data. And data visualizations can help us to better understand the complex data set and communicate the findings with the public. Another one technology we are working at the moment is we call it the federal learning. It's a special areas in machine learning, and those algorithms can ensure the user to share the data with partners in secure and controllable manner, and ensure that the sensitive information is protected, and still allowing the other partner to use the data for effect data analytics. And also the other tools, for example, automated compliance tools, digital reporting systems, and also applications programming interface. By leveraging all these technological tools, we can enhance the efficiency to promote the transparency, also ensure the compliance in data protections, and also to help us to better collaborate with each other and to stimulate the innovations.
Thank you, Ning. So I'll go actually back to Anaïs again, because we started on the issue of data, and we have about, let's say, I think it's another 10 minutes before this panel comes into conclusion. So again, reflecting on a discussion about technological tools as well, and let's say new developments that do not necessarily have to do only with digital platforms, but also with, let's say, developers that work together with platforms. What do you think is the role of data in innovation? Can actually be a source of innovation, but also at the same time a constraint to competition?
Again, very hard to find a simple answer to this, and in a lot of cases, it's debated, and there's been like a lot of literature on whether data is replicable and whether it's a barrier to innovation and or a source of innovation or constraint to competition. In a lot of aspect, like in some aspect, like the DMA and DMCC have acknowledge like the role and how the data can be either an issue or an issue for competition, but also a source for innovation. But there are cases where potentially data portability could lead to less incentive to innovate. So like that will be a case-by-case decision to be made. Like for some firms, like potentially having access to data means like they invest less to get access to those data because from now on they can get them for free. But on other circumstances, like getting access to the data may lead to them like innovating in a different product. So like some good example we had before is the open banking, like where like interoperability measure like led to innovation in the market, but at the same time there is a risk or like potentially in some markets where it's a bit less obvious what like actually data portability would do to the market. So sorry to not come with a one clear answer, but like it'll be a case by case, and I'm sure leading to a lot of debate between regulator and a major player to really really unpack what exactly the measure will lead to, and thinking about the dynamic effect of that measure on the wider competition.
Nice. On the same question now, from the perspective of let's say policy and regulators. So, what do you think, Sophie? Can actually data be a source of innovation? Does it constrain competition? Is it a headache for competition? What is your experience today about that?
Now, the DMA obviously addresses some of those issues as well, because there's a number of data-related provisions in there, making sure, for example, that not having access to certain data is not an impediment to competition. So there's a number of provisions that oblige gatekeepers to share certain data or to not compete based on having access to non-public data that other competitors simply do not have access to. So in that sense, the DMA is basically promoting competition by making sure that data is not abused as part of a strategy to exclude competitors.
Thank you so much, Felicity. The UK experience and the same question. Because we also have in the same direction.
Oh, sorry, Nicholas, I didn't catch the question.
Sorry, your microphone was off for a bit. So it's basically about the same question about the role of data innovation. Can data be a source of innovation, or can it constrain competition? And also, again, again reflecting on latest UK developments and proposals.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't have really anything particularly different to add to the previous speakers on this. It can be like, it is context specific. And to, again, repeat my sort of peers' points of it is really on a case-by-case basis. So I think the broader point I would make is actually what I think a lot of our answers have illustrated is how digital markets are just very complicated. So it's very difficult to come up with, sort of one-size-fits-all rules, which is why each of the regulators and also the firms, it's so important that we do take it on a case-by-case basis, but also that there is an open discussion between the regulators, the potential regulated firms, and other organisations and firms in the relevant markets.
Thank you so much. And Pedro, from your own domestic experience.
Yes, I mean, as you can imagine, I just can echo what has been said before. It's really a case-by-case question. You were saying if it's a headache for competition. I think it's a headache for competition authorities, perhaps, because we have to balance both sides of the coin, to what extent some data practices can be driving efficiencies, and to what extent they can give rise to anti-competitive concerns. I think that we have approached data-related practices in a number of cases within the authority, also in a market study on online advertising, which reached similar conclusions to the one carried out by the CMA. We were analyzing to what extent some data-related practices can at the same time just drive efficiencies related to targeted advertising, but at the same time can give rise to anti-competitive concerns. So really a case-by-case issue.
Thank you again. So very conscious of time, because we have another 5 minutes, and I don't see any audience questions. I will just go around the panel for a quick final one. So starting with again with the policymaker regulator perspective, and I'm not going to ask you the difficult question whether you feel confident that incoming laws actually will guarantee a good balance between innovation and competition, but I will just twist it a bit. So if there is something different to what is proposed or what is taking place, what do you think that would be? I hope it's not very confusing or brings you to too much of a difficult position. Like 4 minutes we close the panel.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Sophie, going with Sophie. Yes. Sorry.
I'm not sure what's the question. I'm sorry. Can you repeat?
Sorry. Are you confident that, let's say, are you confident that the upcoming measures will guarantee a fair balance between competition and innovation?
Yes, indeed. I mean, they are designed to basically make digital markets more contestable than they are right now, and that will should in itself, basically make the whole business environment more supportive of innovation as well. Like Felicity alluded to the fact that currently certain firms have stopped investing in services or developing services further. We've also heard that, and I think the DMA provides a good ex-ante code of conduct on a European level, so ensuring also that we don't have a fragmented set of rules there, to avoid that gatekeepers can unilaterally impose terms and conditions that will make it harder for smaller businesses to invest and to innovate, basically. So is the DMA the whole answer to that? Probably not, but it is certainly a very necessary start in this area.
Thank you, Sophie. Felicity, about UK laws.
Yeah, I mean, I think I completely agree with everything Sophie says. Obviously, the CMA covers only the UK rather than the whole of the EU. I suppose just to pick up on the point of sort of fragmentation, so the DMA covers the whole of Europe, but we as the CMA work very closely with our international counterparts to sort of, try and create a sort of coherent regime. We also work with other regulators in the UK because digital markets by definition cover lots of different regulators. So data is actually quite a good example here of where we are the competition regulator in the UK. There is a regulator for information and sort of data. So we work very closely with them to create a sort of coherent joined up approach, because privacy and competition are closely related, but are actually regulated by different organisations. I think my very short summary would be the DMCC is probably necessary but not sufficient, to use a sort of slightly jargony term, in terms of helping innovation.
Thank you so much. Pedro.
Yes, I think that I agree with Sophie and Felicity have said. I think that the DMA states that its legal interest is different from the one of competition law, so that gives you the idea that both are complementary. So with the DMA is aimed at protecting fairness and contestability in digital markets, competition policy to promote undistorted competition in digital markets. I think that both things could be key to improve competition and innovation in digital markets, and I think that with that, of course, I would be very prudent in going farther away, given the issues we were debating at the beginning of the panel, of how innovation is crucial in digital markets. So before adopting any new regulation, we have to be prudent. And I think with the menu we have, with the toolkit we currently have, I think that we are equipped. And the important thing is that both instruments, competition policy, and in the event it's necessary, digital regulation, adapt to future challenges. So the idea that both things have to be future proof.
Thank you so much. I was actually checking the clock on top of the. We have a clock on top of our panel. So, very quickly, Neng, do you believe in the solutions that are being promoted? Do you find them helpful from the research and development perspective?
Yeah, I think it's up to the authority to have a responsibility to ensure fair competitions that will ultimately benefit both the business and consumers. And to do that, I think the regulators' authorities should establish a clear, transparent, and consistent rules and guidelines. This will allow the business to understand the regulations and operate within the established boundaries.
Thank you so much. And finally, Anaïs, reflecting on the perspective of business.
I think of Deloitte more than I think the regulation are what they are, and our role is really to ensure that the tech firms navigate those new regulation and understand as we mentioned in that talk, the differences between the DMA and DMCC and what is expected. Again, there are frameworks, so on a lot of aspects, it's only in the practice where we'll see whether they are driving innovation or not. They are still, I would say, high level on some aspect, leading to a lot of impact for tech firms. But it's really regulation that needs to be practiced to see, and on a case by case cases, we'll see whether they are driving innovation or not. And as it was said, possibly part of the solution, but not the full solution to promote innovation.
Thank you again. So, well overdue, but I would like to thank so much our panelists, Sophie Ahlswede, Felicity, Algate, Pedro, Hinojo, Anaïs Bauduin, and Dr. Ning Wang. Thank you to the audience, and the only thing I can say to close this discussion is that we're looking our eyes are fixed into the future, just to see how all these new regulatory developments are going to actually help innovation. It's a developing, let's say, storyline between markets and regulation, but we can look positively forward. So thanks everyone again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, and to all the panelists there. Yeah, clearly that there are barriers to competition and innovation, but with so many regulations under development and changing so fast, and with the expertise of companies like Deloitte there to help companies work out how to respond to all of this, then the future is perhaps not quite so daunting as it might seem. So we're going to take another short break now, and then we'll be back for a panel about the perils and potential of digital currencies, about mainly central bank digital currencies, but also other forms of stable coins. Very interesting stuff. So look forward to seeing you in about 15 minutes. Thanks. Bye.